can? Okay, that's what I thought.
I don't think it's the right venue for it, but
So that would be no.
yeah. Hey, Dave, on the latter part of that comment, if they do that, I'm hitting the button. Just want to let you know ahead of time.
Calling the meeting of the Londonderry Town Council for March 7, 2011 to order. Please rise and join me in the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing for a moment of silence for our men and women serving us both here and abroad. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, before I get to our highlight of tonight, which is the presentation of volunteer awards, I have a quick public service announcement from Meg Seymour, our town clerk. To remind people that you can register to vote at the polls tomorrow. You'll need a birth certificate, a passport, or naturalization papers to prove citizenship, and something with their Londonderry address, such as utility bill or state printed driver's license. And if you're unable to find those items, you could still register, but there'll be a bunch of paperwork you'll need to fill out, so please allow enough time to register. The polls are opening tomorrow at 7 a.m. and they'll close at 8 p.m. And then that's for the first half of town meeting. And then the continuation of town meeting will be Saturday, March 12th at 9 a.m. in the Londonderry High School cafeteria. And once again, please leave ample time because you'll have to get in, you'll have to register as you come through the door. And then finally, Meg would like me to announce that April is Dog Registration Month. Every year we try to announce this because inevitably we always have people who wait too late and then they end up getting a fee assessed to them. So April is coming up. Anyone having current rabies information in the system for their dog could come to the clerk's office and license their dog, or if they would like, they may go online through the town website, and reminder postcards are going to be mailed out next week. Okay.
In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, 3 of us need to be at the polls before 7 tomorrow morning. I think Meg pointed out in an email. I'll be
Yes.
there.
And Mike, are you going to be there?
Yes.
Okay, so we got 3 of us. Okay, if I could ask my fellow councilors to join me up in the front here. There is a little issue with the microphone, so I think Drew has set up so that we could talk out in front there, but if not, he may give us hand signals or something telling us to pick up a mic. Okay, so this is the starting on the site on this one.
Oh, okay.
So first, I'd like to ask Councilor Dolan. You bring your own copy?
No, we didn't. Prepared as usual.
Don Jorgensen, are you here? Please come up. And Mark Oswald as well. I want to congratulate you both for your many years of dedicated service to the community, and especially at this time to the Budget Committee as you exit the committee. Thank you. Heartfelt, warm thanks.
Thank you.
Mark?
Okay, next, I'd like to ask Richard Mackey to come forward. I know you're here. So Richard, he was a trustee of the Leach Library for, how many years were you trustee? 12 years, wow. But I want to thank you very much. I had the pleasure of observing some of your meetings this year as the liaison. And 12 years of service to the town, that's commendable, and really appreciate it. I'd like to present you with your very own clock.
Scott Knox? Scott Knox? Guess not.
Well, so Scott was,
You got it?
yeah, he was, served on the trustees of the trust fund for many years. So Scott, thank you very much. Hopefully you're out there listening at home, but we have a clock here. Okay, John.
Ladies, is Peg Johnson and Sandra Weston here? But no Peg, huh?
I don't see her.
She didn't make it. The ladies of, that have been involved in the Elderly Affairs Committee, are the unsung heroes of the community from the standpoint of that. I understand that they are the ones that really get things done. I am the liaison to their committee and have attended, a few of the meetings. But what you see is people with very little resources getting a lot done. And Peg, we really appreciate what you've done for the community and your service. Or Sandy. Sandy. I got confused. I think I had a senior moment. Thank you very much.
Can I say something first?
You can say
Absolutely.
anything you like.
I joined the Elderly Seniors Committee, hopefully to get my girlfriend out of Manchester and back in Londonderry where she really lived all her life. But there was no elderly council. And it really bothered me, so I hung on for a while. And then I watched everybody drag their feet and drag their feet and drag their feet. And everybody over here is in their 50s. And when it's time for them to retire, they got no place to go. You can go to Manchester, you can go to Derry, you can now even go to Pelham. But can you go to Londonderry? No, we don't have it. But you can bring your kids here because we have excellent, excellent education. But you've got to get out before you're a senior, because they got nothing for you.
Okay, next on the docket, Deb Paul and Lara McIntyre. Could you come up, please? Lara and Deb have been on the Heritage Commission for a while, and we appreciate everything that goes on with the Heritage Commission. I mean, it's a vital part of what we do as far as things going before that, to make sure that it fits into the town. In retrospect, it doesn't conflict with how we try to present ourselves as a community. So I just wanted to say thank you very much from the council, and appreciate all your hard work and everything that you guys did for the council. So, thank you. Thank you.
We got connections.
No Cole Melendi? Okay. All right, I'm going to present the recognition for the planning board. Cole Melendi served on the planning board, and John has served on the planning board. And that's a critical part of serving as a volunteer in Londonderry. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hours. Takes a lot of due diligence on the part of those who step up to the plate. Cole stepped up to the plate, and John has stepped up to the plate for numerous years. It can be a thankless position in a lot of ways. However, it doesn't go unnoticed by the community. It doesn't go unnoticed by the council who appoints the members there. So in recognition of that, we want to thank Cole Melendi and thank John Farrell for their dedicated service.
Marilyn Ham, please come up.
It's a historic moment.
Marilyn has been a town historian since history began. So, Marilyn, congratulations for your service, and many thanks for the many, many years that you've dedicated to the community. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for what a rousing group you are. Hope you all stay real interested in the community because it's so important. And sorry we had to change to Derry, but my heart's still here with Londonderry folks. Keep recording the history because it's terribly important. Thank you.
Okay, for our next award, I'd like to ask Mike Brown to make the presentation.
Yep, this is a special award because it kind of signifies what the fabric of Londonderry is really about. For those of us who've been involved in this and those who kind of pay attention to this, we quickly find out that Londonderry is driven by a volunteer spirit and a volunteer work ethic. And in fact, the majority of what gets done in this town is through the efforts of volunteers. Very little of it is done by paid professionals if you really think about it over the course of a whole year. So I have the distinct pleasure of honoring the volunteers of the year, and it's plural because oftentimes it's hard to pick just one person. But there's a group of people, 3 people in particular, who did an outstanding job. And what I mean by that is there was a void that was created by a policy decision that the council I'm on made. We felt we made the right decision, but it created a gap in the community's fabric where we were no longer possibly going to be able to offer a program which has a lot of value called Beautify Londonderry. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee, who I'm a liaison to, kind of took that under their wing and said, hey, what do we do about this? Do we just let the program go by the wayside? Do we take a year off? Do we run it as a limited program? What the heck do we do? Well, what they did is they had a call for volunteers, and they said, do we have anybody in the community that's willing to step in and fill that void and run the program as a pure volunteer effort, like a lot of other groups have done? And 3 individuals raised their hand and said, yes, we'll do it. And we want to honor those 3 individuals. So I'd like to invite Maureen Caldwells, Carrie Stanley, and Joel Sadler up front. Before I give them their very heavy awards, so be careful, okay? These folks basically stepped in and did a project plan for the town of Londonderry where they would manage, run, facilitate, and coordinate the efforts of a lot of volunteers, contact sponsors, our wonderful corporate sponsors in town to get funding, and basically run a 5-week program that signifies what's really great about Londonderry, the beautification of it. And it's just amazing to me. When I saw this, I said, why do they want to do that much work? And then they say, we want to do it again next year. I mean, that really deserves some recognition. So I'm really pleased to give you guys this award because you really deserve it. Thank you. Joel, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Nice job, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairing committee.
Wait a minute, hold on, let's get that shot.
Thank you. Future volunteers, right here. Okay. Yeah.
For our next award, which is the Outstanding Citizen of the Year for Londonderry, I'd like to ask former Councilor Joe Paradise.
Did I get it again?
And one thing I noticed, just scanning quickly, I noticed George Herman, who's was Outstanding Citizen, what, about 5 years ago or so?
Something like that.
And then-
5 or 6.
Al, you, like 2 years ago? Volunteered? So, anyway, this person, there was a lot of work that went into bringing this forward. So I would just want to thank you now, Joe, for all your help with this. So.
Oh, I didn't get
it? No, I'm sorry. So this person, he has been dedicated to serving the community for most of his adult life. Okay, and this man of the cloth has been dedicated to helping all in the community regardless of their faith. He has supported those out of work, the sick, the dying, those with medical problems, generous assistance to those who need oil or food, especially through the food pantry. He's the biggest supporter of, and I couldn't believe this list, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Squires, the Maidens of the Jonah Ark, a Londonderry High School band, where apparently he even got up at 4 a.m. to see them off on one of their trips. And he's been a big supporter of those serving in the armed services, especially those deployed to war zones, where their contributions to the freedom of our country cannot be fully fathomed by most of us. So it is my distinct pleasure to present the Citizen of the Year Award to Father Bob Kudo. He really did it. He's very creative how he
We have to tell you, before he starts, because he'll get going. A lot of people from St. Jude's are going to hell because we all lied to get him here. I don't think he knew anything about it, so we told him Carol Connolly was getting some other award. We'll at least be going to confession, if not hell.
You're gonna be there for a long
Yes, we
time.
Stop saying the Hail Marys.
I heard there's 3 collections this Sunday. Yeah, where Joe sits. And where Kathy sits. Why do I feel you were involved in this? She called the office today to make sure that I was coming, to make sure that I was here to honor Carol. You're gonna pay too.
All the water you needed to get out of them.
Thank you. You know, it really isn't, it really belongs to the people of this town, and the people of the parish who've been extraordinarily generous and caring about so many of our brothers and sisters in need, and we have many. And without the people of the parish, without the students of our town who contribute financially and with food, we wouldn't be able to help so many who are truly in need, and we hope to continue to do that. Thank you.
Joe, you get the box. Okay, this next award, I've been given the distinct pleasure of presenting Retiring Town Council Member Award. Those of you who remember 3 years ago, Mike and I ran together for the 2 seats that we now hold, at least for the next 5 days. But I remember the very first, I believe it was Marty retiring after our first year. I remember you telling me that, I can't wait to get my fleece, I can't wait to get my fleece. So,
I do remember that.
it is my distinct pleasure to present, I think you're the green one, right?
Yeah.
A fleece with the coat of arms of the town of Londonderry on it to Town Councilor Mike Brown. And Mike,
Thank you. Thank you.
And give him the clock too.
Oh. I didn't realize that we got a, you got a clock too? You got a nice clock and a
Thank you very much.
commemorative.
Right, so we can see what time it starts, we can turn things on. Watch
Get the
town council
popcorn
meeting.
going, right?
I'm fully retired
Best of luck to everyone.
All right, the next one, another retiring town councilor, Paul, for many years on the planning board, for many years in his volunteering of Alert, for his contribution to the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, for his years of service on the council, and putting up with all the wonderful things that we encounter along the way. However, tonight was a great night as far as honoring certain citizens, and that's what it's all about, is the community that we're all here together in it. Anyway, I want to thank Paul for his 3 years of service on the council, and he picked blue. Sir,
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure serving.
So just a couple brief words. It's hard to believe how fast the 3 years went. It seems like only yesterday I was going to bed early so I could get up and sit out the polls all day. And, it was freezing that day. Mike was getting over pneumonia and he was sitting out there. And actually Sean was there too because we...
And I got pneumonia the week after.
So, but just one of the things I wanted to do was, it's been a pleasure serving the community of Londonderry, and although I'm probably done with serving political office, I'll continue to serve the community with Alert and with Scouts and in other organizations. So I hope others are encouraged to step forward and volunteer and help out. But it's been a pleasure serving you, and I look forward to continuing to serve you in other capacities. Thank you very much.
Well, don't forget them gun ranges, you're the president.
I don't think I'll be president. I'm done with that.
All right. So you want that back? Get an agenda pulled up here.
Okay, before I get to, we're still in public comment, and I do have a couple other things to do. This was the fun part, but first I'd like to ask Lara McIntyre to come forward. She had something she wanted to speak about briefly, and then I'm going to go to the chief, and then I have at least, if you're okay, I at least have, I think Al wanted to speak as well. So Lara, if you could, yep, take a seat. Hopefully those mics are functioning okay. And name and address,
Is it
please.
working? All right, Laura McIntyre. I don't know if I have to give out my address, 6 Red Fern Circle. I'm not here as a citizen tonight. I'm here in a professional capacity as a staff member of Senator Kelly Ayotte, and she's working hard to get out into every community here across the state. She just wanted to let you know that she's open for business down in Washington and up in Manchester. We have our office there. And she is looking forward to hearing from the town, the people who work for the town and as citizens as well, any concerns or issues that they might have with the federal government. I'm happy to hear anything that you have now, and we'll also be hanging out here for the next 45 minutes or an hour or so if people want to come by and pass along their comments.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thanks, Lara.
Thank you, Lara.
You're welcome.
Okay. Al, I'm going to let you go, and then Chief Hart, I will then go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to see you go. But anyways, I'm here not, like Lara, not as a resident, but as as your state representative. I've gotten quite a few phone calls here within the last day or two concerning flyers that were being put out throughout the town in mailboxes, which I told them to go to the postmaster and file a complaint because it is against the law. But on the flyers that will be putting out is pretty much on the SB2 Charter Commission going on. And the reason I want to bring this forward is because rather than me bring it to the AG, I think the town should look into this because you all put out the RSAs that they have to comply with on flyers. And on the flyers that are being going out, which is a bogus flyer, and it's a basically illegal electioneering going on in our town for the town elections, that they don't even have on the bottom who the trustee is or anything like that. So I'm asking for everyone that's getting these in to disregard these scare tactics that are going on in our town, and I'm looking for guidance, whether I should go to the AG or whether I leave it to the air on this illegal electioneering that's going on in the town, basically to find out why, how come, and why would anyone, go against the laws that are in place. So that's pretty much it on guidance, what you, recommendation is, or whether you have an avenue to take care of this here, because you do put out the electioneering guidance with the RSAs that they're to comply with.
Well, Al, one thing I could tell you just from personal experiences, with the mailboxes, if they were put in mailboxes, you do need to take that up with the postmaster. We
Right.
wouldn't have any jurisdiction over
I
that.
agree.
So, and I can't speak for anything else. I'm not familiar with the RSAs or any town ordinances that say you have to have, certain indication on there. So, I would suggest you perhaps talk to the town manager, or if you feel that a crime was committed, talk to the police.
Okay.
If you
Well,
feel a
maybe
crime
what I'll
was
do is
committed.
go to the AG then. I just wanted to see if you had anything set up on this here, because it's pretty unsat that some have gone to this here avenue there and false stuff that's being put out on electioneering in our town, and, it needs to be corrected one way or another and stopped.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Okay, Chief Hart, if you could come forward, please, with your staff.
Did you have another person for public comment?
I'll ask for a final, in case there's
okay.
anybody else.
Very fine.
Okay. Hi.
Good evening, thank you for having us. I'm noticing a trend.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilor O'Keefe. As everyone knows, Captain Fullen is here as well. As everyone knows, in the police department, it is March Mustache Madness Month. So with the end of winter, we've all kind of gone a little crazy. So in an attempt to sort of keep morale at a high level, we decided to suspend the facial hair regulations and allow mustaches and goatees through the month of March. It's hopeful, actually scientists have discovered that, in fact, the growth of facial hair will aid and abet the end of winter. So with that, seriously? Yeah. So what?
You guys should still be searching for the groundhog, because he lied.
Actually, we started, what was it, last, well, actually, some started earlier than that. But anyway, those who comply with the rules and, regarding facial hair started March 1st. Some felt that if you were on days off, you could start before that. I, of course, disagree with that because I believe in following the rules. Al, I don't want to get into it here. All right. So anyway, but did you notice this winter was beautiful? It always takes 4 days for it to kind of get going. And then look what happened. It was a beautiful, anyway. Councilor Dolan asked us a few weeks ago to prepare sort of a presentation to help folks be aware of what to do and how to avoid and what the potential risks were with regard to home invasions and residential burglaries. So I asked Lieutenant Gandia, who I'd like to introduce right now, to help us out with regard to this, and he put together this program, which I'm delighted to show you and the residents here. It touches on a few important issues, and obviously Lieutenant Gandia will go into greater depth with regard to this. But, first is be safe. And the most safe thing you can do is be situationally aware of your home. Be aware of open doors, that you have closed, be aware of open windows, be aware of things that are different. Also, we're going to get into the use of defending your home. and Lieutenant Gandia will get into that. Certainly, that's a question of choice, but if you choose that remedy, you should be trained in how to do that. So at this point, I'd like to turn over the presentation to Lieutenant Chris Gandia.
Thank you, Chief. I'll wait for the lights to come on just a little bit here.
How's that? Can we lower just a little so we can kind of have this dark up here and then later in the background?
Okay, that should be good. Again, my name is Lieutenant Chris Gandia. I have a presentation here. I'm going to be speaking in terms of the home invasions and residential burglaries with a focus on risk mitigation. But before I get into the presentation, I want to kind of go over a current event and illustrate that happened last month. On February 12th, last month, up in Ashland PD, you guys familiar with this story? A subject came home to his house, and as he was entering his home, he found a pair of work boots at the entryway with fresh snow on them. So he looked at them, he realized his family wasn't home, the shoes didn't belong to anybody in his family, and definitely threw up some red flags for him. He retrieved a handgun and then systematically started searching through his house in a slow, deliberate fashion when he came upon a burglar upstairs in the second floor bedroom. He held the guy at gunpoint for a little bit of time, and then what eventually happened, the guy was able to get out of the upstairs window, jumped out of the window, and landed in the snow below. The guy, in fact, then ran back into the house, retrieved his boots that he left in the front entryway, and took off. The next day, he was found in the Plymouth Hospital, and he was treated for a broken ankle. Turns out that this person was the homeowner's next-door neighbor. So, but let me ask you, with the who's familiar with the story? Who knows the story? Okay, let me ask you, what were some of the factors that mitigated or helped his safety? Who says the firearm? Firearm? No hands? One hand? How about, well, what cued him off? What was it that cued him off? The shoes.
Yeah.
So did he not have good environmental awareness of his own house? He did. You saw it right away. Did he have a plan of action? What was his plan of action? Retrieve the gun, systematically search his house. Now we can debate his plan of action if it was good or not, if it was the prudent thing to do or not, but he had environmental awareness and he had a plan of action. So as I go through this presentation here, I'll kind of refer back to the current event that I just illustrated. Common definitions. Basically, a home invasion is the crime of breaking into an occupied dwelling. This has a very specific intent. Usually a home invasion has the intent for robbery, assault, or rape. It's something that they decide that they want to get into a house, they know it's occupied, and they have an intention there. What differs from that with burglary is it's basically an illegal entry into an occupied or an unoccupied building, not necessarily a residential dwelling. So these are kind of some of the common definitions that are out there. In New Hampshire, we do not have a home invasion statute or a law. It's categorized under burglary. And to kind of summarize it, what is a burglary? A burglary is an illegal entry into a building or an occupied structure, basically to commit a crime. It's a Class B felony, except there are some provisions that enhance the penalties to it. If the burglary is perpetrated in the dwelling of another at night, or with the use of a deadly weapon, or inflicts injury, it's upgraded to a Class A felony. So that's kind of where it captures a little bit about the home invasions here. What I did was when I did some research on this, I pulled some statistics from Bureau of Justice statistics here that kind of illustrate a little bit more about residential burglaries and home invasions. The average for the years 2003 to 2007, there was about 3.7 million households that were burglarized. And if we start looking into the details of this, we can see that about just over 27% household members were present during a burglary. And of those people that were present, about 26% were subjected to some sort of violent offense in their house. So 25% of the time, somebody was in their house of a burglary, a violent offense occurred. It's kind of substantial when you look at the statistics that way. Again, going on the national statistics here, the relationship. We need to look at the relationship between the victims and the offenders. Now, I kind of expected this. 65% of violent burglary offenders were known to their victims. A lot of it has to do sometimes with drugs. You know, they know who their victims are. They know who, what they have in the house, if it's drugs or if it's money. So that's pretty common. 28% of violent burglary offenders were strangers. They didn't know their victims. This I found a little interesting here. Weapons. Of the violent burglaries, 61% of the offenders were unarmed when the violence occurred. Actually, I thought it was going to be a little bit more than that. I thought that they would be going into these residences with weapons or implements to cause the violence, but actually it was the other way around here. That was a little surprising to me. 12% of the offenders were armed with a firearm, and 11% of the offenders were armed with a sharp weapon. Now let's look at New Hampshire here. New Hampshire statistics for burglary. Reported for 2009, there's just over 4,400 burglaries reported in New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire, we don't differentiate between a residence and a business, so I don't have the breakout for that. But there's just over 4,400 burglaries in New Hampshire. In Londonderry, in 2008, we had 42 reported burglaries in town. If we go to the next year, 2009, we had 69% reported burglaries, a 64% increase in those 2 years there. And in 2010, we jumped up to 79 reported burglaries, a 15% increase from 2008. Overall, if you look at 2008, that's an 88% increase in those 3 years. So significant. There's a lot of factors that I think that could play into why it's going up. I don't have an isolated incident of why they're jumping so much, but in fact, the trend is going up. Okay, when we go look at risk mitigation here, we should understand the modus operandi of the suspects, the people that are committing these crimes here. The following tactics are very commonplace when people are looking to commit a crime. They'll case neighborhoods. They'll look for easy targets. Is your house in a real congested residential area, or is it a wooded lot? Is there a trail system behind your house? I've seen in the past where we'll deal with a lot of burglaries where there's actually trail systems behind the house, and those houses along those trail systems will get hit over a period of time. Mailboxes. What are some issues with mailboxes when you go on vacation?
Forgetting to shut your mail off.
Forget to shut your mail off, and then also the mail accumulates in there. So little things like that, shutting your mail off while you're on vacations. Vehicles and driveways. Do you have a garage? Is it down? Is it up? Do you not have a garage? Is it very easy for people to find out if you're home or not? Knock and talks. This is very popular too. Before somebody wants to break into a house, they'll usually go up, they'll case the neighborhood, and they'll do a knock and talk. They'll pose as salespeople, they'll pose as people being lost, looking for directions. So a lot of these residential burglaries you're going to find that take place during the daytime. They'll case the neighborhoods, they'll see a target location, they'll pose as somebody that they're not, they'll try to make contact. If they go up to the house and there's no contact made, that's when they might take their action. Layered security measures. Prevention. Are we able to prevent a burglary in our residence 100% of the time? 100%?
No.
No, we're not. So the best we can do is risk mitigation. And I like to look at it as security layers here. The more security layers you have in your residence, the better for your risk mitigation. There's different ways that we can do this. First, neighborhood environmental awareness, suspicious activity, unusual behavior, solicitations, business or political. Are people carrying identifying tags with them? You make observations, write it down, report to the police. I'm going to go back in history here a little bit. About 22 years ago, 1989, September 12th, a lady was murdered in Londonderry in the north side of Old Derry Road, Kimberly Goss. Does that name ring a bell for anybody here? She was 29. The suspect was, his last name was Vander Bogart. He had been kind of stalking her behind the scenes, unknowing to her. What he did was he cased the area. He saw a moment of opportunity. Unfortunately, he went in and he brutally raped and murdered her. That case was solved shortly after it happened. How'd that happen? Does anybody know? Anybody here know?
I don't remember.
The way the case was solved was because during the commission of the offense, Vander Bogart had parked his car on the street. We talk about environmental awareness here. The neighbor across the street, in fact, I believe he was a teenager, noticed that something looked out of place. He had the intuition to write the license plate down and just kind of store it away. Didn't really think much of it after that. It was after a couple of days when all of a sudden this whole thing got found out that she was missing and she was actually murdered in her backyard, that he came forward and said, hey, listen, I don't know if this means anything or not, but a few days ago I noticed this car parked on the side of the road. It just looked out of place. And it turns out it was Vander Bogart's vehicle, and that's really what solved the murder. And if it wasn't for that kid writing it down that day, would that murder have been solved? I don't know. Possibly unlikely on that. So keep things in mind here. Environmental awareness. Know what's around your neighborhood. You guys are in your neighborhoods all the time. You know what's normal, you know what's not normal. Anything looks suspicious, write it down. Suspicious people. This apartment's full of them sometimes. I don't know, I think it's the mustache. This is from last year's March Mustache Madness. Suspicious people. If there's people in your neighborhood that just look out of place, their behavior's a little strange, note it, write it down, and give the police a call. We'll investigate. Again, going into the layered security measures here. Dogs are a great deterrent. I've actually investigated crimes. We've actually caught people in the process of breaking into houses. And afterwards, when we've interviewed them, I've been on personal interviews where they said that we were actually going to hit this house over here, but we chose not to because there's a dog in that house. So dogs are a great deterrent. If people are pet owners, you have a dog, you have that going for you. Locks. What type of locks do you have on your house? Are they deadbolts? If you don't have a deadbolt, sometimes people just have those the door locks. Those can be easily slipped with a piece of plastic or a credit card. So what type of locks do you have on your house? You're lighting at nighttime. What type of lighting do you have? Do you light up your driveway? Do you light up your house? Do you not have lights on? Signage. Alarm signs are always a good idea, even if you don't have an alarm system. Maybe post a couple signs on your doors. Even beware of dogs, even if you don't have a dog and you have beware of dog signs. I know that if I was a suspect and was walking up to a house and I saw alarm signs on doors, I saw a little beware of dog on the property, am I going to want to hit that house? Yeah, probably not. I'm going to think twice about it. Definitely going to think twice about it. Alarms, silent versus audio. I'll give you a little insight here on this. Silent alarms are great and all. Your neighborhood is happy when they're going off all the time because they don't know about it. But when a suspect is in a house, there's an audio alarm going off, it draws attention. Even if the neighborhood says, the alarm's always going off, it's just, Mr. Smith's house, you get no big deal. The person inside that house, or if it breaks into that house and that alarm starts going off, he's not going to want to be there. So audio alarms I find to be very effective. With silent alarms, there can be significant delays. And I've rolled up on businesses especially where an alarm is going off, and 5 to 10 minutes later, we get a phone call from the alarm company saying, hey, this business has an alarm going off. Well, there can be significant delays there. But again, another layer.
Do you know why there's a delay from the alarm company?
I don't.
The alarm company's policy is that when they receive the alarm, especially on a residential, they call the house first. That's after almost a 1-minute delay before it transmits. If they don't answer, they go to their call list.
Yep.
Then they call you.
So there can be significant delay there.
5 to 8 minutes.
5 to 8 minutes. Basically, what I find that alarm systems do is that if it's an actual alarm and somebody broke into a house, it gives the homeowner notice that something's amiss there. We get there, we show up, and we investigate the crime. Is really what an alarm system does. So there is that delay, and be aware of that. Oops, I think I went backwards. Okay, hard target. Basically, all those security layers. This is what your house should look like in the eyes of the perpetrator. A hard target. Does anybody know what a picture of this is? Fort Knox. That's right. Fort Knox. So if you get your house to look like Fort Knox in the eyes of the perpetrator, you're doing a good job.
Your neighbor won't like it.
Residential environment. Know your environment. Did that suspect in Ashland know his environment? Did he know his house? Did the red flags go up? Did he act on it? He did. He did. Know your environment. know your escape routes, no lockable doors in rooms, windows for egress. Now, when we go into our homes, we usually don't look at it in this manner here. You know, we don't go into our homes and say, hey, we need a plan of action to get out of our house if there's a perpetrator coming in. We don't really kind of look at our house like that. But if we do, we'll find that, you know, maybe we have some good escape routes and maybe we have some not so good escape routes. Is the master bedroom on a second floor and you got a 30-foot drop to hit the ground? Or is your master bedroom on a first floor? So look at those things and look at your house in a different light. Have a plan of action. We'll talk about plan of action. Arriving home, signs of a burglary. Don't enter, call the police. Don't enter. Discovering a sign of a burglary while already in the house. Don't touch anything. Recommendation will be to exit the house immediately and call the police. Why is that? Because the person could still be in there. And just like up in Ashland, I'm not going to get into a debate about whether his plan of action was prudent or not. That'll be up for you guys to determine. But in the police department, we always have this philosophy is +1. Does anybody know what the philosophy of +1 is? If we think there's one suspect, there's two. If we think there's two suspects, there's three. So there's the +1. Would it have gone down differently in Ashland if he went into that house and there was two suspects in there? Could it have been different?
Sure.
Would he have been in a position to be able to handle two people? Probably not. Probably not. So that's why I say, take the prudent course of action here. Exit your house. Plan of action. If the burglary is in progress while you are at home. If you're by yourself, my recommendation is escape. Remember what I said before? 25% of people who are home are the victim of a violent burglary. 25%. Are you willing to gamble on those statistics? I'm not. Sometimes you can't escape. What's your next best choice? Barricade. We'll talk about that. If you have immobile people in the house, small children, elderly, it's at night, you can't get people out of the house, and you're the primary caretaker, and there's somebody breaking into your house. Do you have a designated room? Do you have a cell phone handy, a landline, a flashlight? Some of the basics. Do you have that plan of action? Do you know what you're going to do if you are upstairs in your bedroom and you hear somebody smashing through a downstairs door? Have you thought of that? Where are you going to go to retreat? And a lot of it may vary depending on who's in your house. Do you go to your child's room because your child is in the room already and you barricade that door? Is that door able to be locked? Do you go into your master bedroom? Do you have a lock on your master bedroom closet? Could you put one on there to slow them down and give a little time delay for your advantage? Things to think about. Calling 911. The benefit of calling 911 is you're able to trace it upon disconnection. With a landline, we will get instant notification of where your address is. I know a lot of people are kind of moving away from landlines and just have cell phones. If there's a disconnection on a cell phone, what happens is it goes through 911 in Concord. Upon the disconnection, 911 can find out who the service provider is. They can call us and let us know if it's Verizon, give us the phone number, and then in a relatively short fashion, and when I say short fashion, I'm probably talking 5 to 10 minutes, we could call Verizon and get an address and a name associated with that cell phone. So it takes longer. It takes a little bit longer. If you call the police emergency line for Londonderry, the 432-1111 number, and upon disconnection, we don't have that instant access to where your address is. So keep that in mind. Call 911. It's another just layer of communications and information that we're able to obtain by going that route. Try to avoid contact with the perpetrators. Again, if you can barricade yourself, keep yourself safe, give time to your advantage, it will be in your best interest. Okay, talk a little bit about the laws here. Physical force in defense of a person. Again, this is summarized for the presentation here. But a person is justified in using deadly force when somebody's breaking into their house and they feel that there's going to be an act of violence committed against them during the course of a burglary. You are justified as a homeowner or any unlawful force in the commission of a felony against the actor within the actor's dwelling or curtilage. Curtilage is your property. Do you have to retreat? Does anybody know this? Do you have to retreat? Not within your house. No, you do not. You're not required to retreat if it's within your dwelling or your curtilage. However, is this the most prudent thing to do sometimes?
No.
No, it's not. Sometimes we get a sense of bravado. We want to feel that, hey, this is my home, nobody's going to come in here, nobody's going to attack me and my family, I'll stay ground. Which is great and all, but sometimes it's more prudent to escape if that's the better course of action. Sometimes it's better. I go into use of force in defense of premises now. Basically, a person in possession or control of property can use non-deadly force to remove somebody who's trespassing on their property to prevent the crime of trespass. They can use deadly force if the person is on their property trespassing and the person is attempting to commit arson. They can use deadly force. Weapons. Really, this comes down to a personal decision here, to have a weapon in your house, because there's a lot of things that you need to consider, a lot of ramifications. You need to be proficient. Sometimes people will say to me, hey, listen, I got this gun 10 years ago. It's for personal protection. I keep it in my house in a safe. I ask them, well, how many times have you shot it? Well, none really. I don't even know if it's loaded or not. Well, under stress, bad things happen. And weapons jam, or, you don't have the knowledge or capability to handle a weapon, that can go bad for you. Like I said before, when I was looking at the statistics, that in the National Bureau of Labor, they showed that 65 or 60% of people breaking into a house are unarmed. 12% had firearms. If you bring a gun into the house, you've now guaranteed yourself 100% that a firearm is involved. It's your own. It's now your own. You need to be proficient with your weapons. You also have to have the will to use it if necessary. A firearm is no good in the hands of somebody who's not willing to use it. Because what happens is it will be turned against them. So and there's some people that will say to me, listen, there's no way I could ever shoot somebody, there's no way I could ever take a life. And I respect that, and that's fine. If you know that, then a weapon is probably not a good choice for that person. Then we go into the safe storage of a weapon. Are there children in the house? Under stress, will you be able to obtain it? Do you keep it under lock and key? Is it a combination? Because under stress, you start losing fine dexterity skills. Right? Under stress, you're going to be able to know to open up that safe and access that weapon. Where is it located? If you're in the master bedroom and you have a safe in the basement where you keep this firearm, are you going to be able to obtain it at nighttime when somebody's breaking in? No, you're not. So there's a whole bunch of factors you have to consider when you're looking at bringing a weapon into the house here. Conclusion. Basically, we look at 3 different things here that will help mitigate your safety. Environmental awareness, layered security measures. The more layers you have, the more secure your place becomes, and a plan of action. Knowing what you're going to do in an emergency and under stress. Preparation will mitigate these risks. So, anybody have any questions? Yes.
Just real quick, on the definition of burglary, if your vehicle is in your driveway and someone breaks into it, is that considered burglary, or
No,
is there
it's
another term
not.
for that?
No, that would not be burglary. Burglary would have to be an occupied or an unoccupied dwelling.
It would have to be a dwelling,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So what would that be considered if someone breaks into your vehicle?
It would either be criminal trespass, it would be criminal mischief for breaking into the vehicle. If they're stealing things from the vehicle, then that would be theft.
Okay.
Yes. If they steal the vehicle, that would be more
Obviously,
vehicle
they're
theft.
breaking the law, but.
You're breaking the law, but it would not be classified as a burglary per se. Yes.
Other questions from the council, Tom?
Thanks for a great presentation. I appreciate it. I think it's a good public service for our residents. Question for you. Most people have never called 911. So if they were to call 911, can you explain what they'll hear on the other end of the phone? Because it's typically not the local police department they talk to.
Correct. It goes up to 911 in Concord. An emergency dispatcher will greet them on the phone. They'll ask them what their emergency is. And once they find out what the emergency is, that really elicits the response from the telecommunications operator to ask the next series of questions. Because if it's a medical emergency, they'll go through a series of medical questions. If it's a violent offense that's going on in the house, they'll ask you another series of questions. So once the emergency is determined by the operator, they'll start asking them, what's your location, who's in the house with you, describe your house to me, and they'll start getting that information. Meanwhile, what they're doing is they're patching it to us, and when it gets patched over to us, the 911 operator will say, this is who I have on the line, this is their emergency, what's going on right now, this is where they live, and then they patch through, and then we take it over from there. So it's probably about a 15-second to 30-second intake from 911 before it gets patched over to us. Sure.
Other questions, Mike?
Yeah, a couple. Chris, thanks very much. The salespeople, the door-to-door vendor type thing, it's my understanding, and I hope I'm not wrong, that we have either some local regulations or some requirement that they register with the town in some way, shape, or form and get a permit. So if they show up at our door, should we have an expectation that they can produce that or have an ID of some sort?
They should, and to do it correctly, they do need to register with the towns. And actually, a recent bill had just gotten passed last year, which I'm familiar with, that requires the town's option to perform criminal background checks on a national level for solicitors going door to door. It's really up to the towns to do that, but the option is now there, where in the past it was not.
Okay. Is it given that, is it okay for a homeowner or someone who's at home who sees someone come to their door and they got a queasy feeling, they don't see an ID, there's no permit, is it okay to call you guys and say, hey, someone just dropped by, are there supposed to be people selling?
That would be
Or
highly
Is
encouraged.
that a call that we shouldn't make?
No, you definitely should make. Highly encouraged. Typically, when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, that means something is amiss, and go with your gut reaction.
Okay, and the follow-up to that, I'm glad to hear that, is because you guys are busy, and some people will hesitate to call you. If something looks strange, and they'll go, I shouldn't bother them. Is it better for them to call you guys if they see something strange in the neighborhood?
Of course.
And have you stop by, even though it's taking you out of your way in terms of what you're doing?
Absolutely, and it can even be a simple phone call saying, listen, this happened, I happen to get the plate number, it may not be anything, but I don't even need to see an officer, but just so you guys know.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden we start getting other phone calls, or something does happen in that neighborhood,
Okay.
then we have that information.
Got it.
So does it necessarily mean that we need to send an officer if the person doesn't think it rises to that level? No, it doesn't.
Okay,
But definitely a call should be made.
great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Sean?
I just wanted to say thanks, Chris. Excellent presentation. Going to what Mike said, last summer I had, back in June, I had somebody that came to the door soliciting. It definitely wasn't right. I ended up calling up, and I guess you guys had found out that they were not registered with the town. So it definitely is a valuable call to make. Takes 2 seconds, and I'm sure you guys would rather hear than not.
Absolutely.
And I think that after that, I think I called Dave and asked him about the ordinance for, people coming into town and having the proper credentials and stuff like that, so. But thank you very much, it was a very informative presentation.
Welcome.
John, do you have any?
No, it's great. I mean, I've been in the position to have to use the service a couple of times, and one night, the alarm went off, and the dispatcher instructed me to stay at the front door. John Perry and Zip showed up,
Oh, yeah?
and actually, just the little humorous part is that there was torches in the backyard, and one of the officers almost took one of them out because he thought he was coming at him. but the great part is that the response is just outstanding. I mean, we're a little bit further away, right on the Litchfield line and everything, and I have to say, whenever any of the guys have come, and I'm the house that the nativity scene was destroyed in 5 years ago, nothing but complete professionalism and nothing but, great instruction when they get there. So it's always appreciated. Thank
Good.
you.
I'm glad you had that experience. And, not to plug Officer Perry, he's a close friend of mine, but he's an outstanding canine handler. His dog is actually in training right now, going through drug school, which will be done at the end of the month. And we utilize him all the time. He's a great asset to the department and the community and stuff. So we use him quite frequently on building searches and house checks of things of just this nature here. And it not only does it safeguard the people, but it safeguards the officers going in there using Mingo. So.
Haven't met Mingo yet.
You will very soon. You will very soon.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. This is very helpful. And,
You're welcome.
Does anyone in the public have any quick questions, or Chris? Just got a...
The stat that you brought up about 15%, a 15% rise in Londonderry, does that follow any kind of a trend statewide, nationally? I mean, it seems like a 15% jump is pretty high. I mean, for burglaries, I think was that the figure, 15?
Well, it actually has jumped up considerably more than that. It jumped up, 68%, and then 88% when you looked at from 2008 to 2010. And there could be a lot of reasons on why that would happen. I happened to talk to Detective Sergeant Mike McCutcheon, who actually provided me these statistics, and he made mention that in 2008, we also had been doing a lot of drug interdictions, and a lot of drug activity and stuff was uncovered, and obviously there's a lot of connection between drugs and burglaries, people needing money for drugs or breaking in for those reasons. So that could be one reason. There could be a whole bunch of other reasons too. I don't have anything that pinpoints why.
Well,
Sometimes
I was thinking the economy must have something to do with it.
it can be, criminals or people who are not getting jobs who, are right on the line there, may resort to, conducting themselves in criminal activity to, make ends meet is a possibility as well. There could be a myriad of reasons.
So you don't think that it's abnormally high for, just a state average?
I think you have to look at the communities and compare them to, the surrounding like communities to see, are we higher than others or not?
You don't have that.
I don't have those statistics, no, I didn't go that deep into it. But I think when you have to look at the totality of the circumstances, and understand that there's a whole bunch of reasons why these,
No, I
figures can
understand
go up.
that, but I'm wondering like where we stand with the rest of the state.
Sure, sure.
Actually, may I address that?
Yeah,
If you
absolutely.
don't mind. Actually, Londonderry is one of the safest communities in one of the, if not the safest state in the country. This is a very safe place. Interesting, Londonderry has a couple of interesting dynamics, however. One is proximity with two exits to the highway that exit almost directly into residential areas. So that provides ease for the potential criminal. Let me address as well the layered security issue. What Lieutenant Gandia talked about was the layered security for your home. That also obtains with regard to the community. The single most important and most effective tool in reducing crime in any community is a uniformed police officer in a well-marked car driving around. Guaranteed, that car drives by, a person isn't going to take the risk of burglary in that home. So we need to think about that as well. I do think the economy had something to do with the increase. There are a large number of factors, including perhaps less officers on the road. I think that's a reality as well. So.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much for the opportunity
Thank you.
to address you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And save that presentation. That was excellent, it really was.
Thank you.
And we are still in public comment, so before we move on to a public hearing, anyone else from the public have anything they'd like to say in public comment? See none? Oh, you? Oh. I wasn't sure if you were. You're it, Reed. Mr. Clark.
Okay. I thought I'd talk about the weather. No laugh, so. Tomorrow is voting day, and notwithstanding anything that's been said before, I hope that everybody will go out and vote against SB 2 simply because the first one worked. Why bother changing it? And if you think of the thing that the more people that vote, that's wonderful, but they're still voting for the 5 things that you gentlemen have put together. They haven't voted, they're not voting for a myriad of things. whereas the way it is now, you can vote several varying upwards and downwards in the budget. And as a matter of fact, last year, I think we saved $30,000 at the meeting. So it works out. Think about it before you change it. Thank you.
It's on. Name and address, please. I don't know if I asked them.
Road. As a Charter Commission member, I figured I'd just at least speak my piece on this. I think that the new proposal opens up doors and avenues to a lot more voters. And I just, speaking as one commission member, I feel like it's good for the town. That's it.
Thanks, Chris.
Anyone else? Okay. Next on our agenda is a public hearing, so I'll need a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of going into public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and we are in public hearing. We have one item, ordinance 2011-1, and Councilor O'Keefe, would you please read?
Certainly. Ordinance 2011-01, introduced on February 7th of this year. Public hearing tonight, 3/7/11. An amendment to the zoning ordinance and map relating to rezoning map 15, lot 22 and 124 Rockingham Road. Whereas the planning board received a request to rezone the above referenced parcels from split zone C2 pod to 1-1, and whereas the requested rezoning is consistent with the lot development capability due to existing development patterns, and whereas the planning board has recommended that the town council act favorably upon this request, now therefore be ordained by the town council in the town of Londonderry that the town zoning ordinance and zoning map be amended to reflect rezoning map 15, lots 22 and 124 from split zone C2 pod to I1 or II to become effective upon the following: planning board approval of a voluntary merger of lot consolidation of the two parcels, and 2, planning board approval for the site for the expansion of the facility that is reasonably consistent with that which was presented conceptually to the planning board on December 8th, 2010. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, a motion to a second.
Second.
Okay, we are in public hearing. Presentation from town staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Tim Thompson, Town Planner. As Sean mentioned in the reading, this is a request to rezone the parcel that a current Londonderry freezer warehouse is situated on, and an adjacent parcel, which will allow for an expansion of approximately 84,000 square feet of the existing facility. Currently, the zoning is Commercial 2 with the Performance Overlay District. However, given the nature of the parcel, the current lot coverage requirement for the commercial district would limit the amount of expansion that this particular facility would be able to undertake without obtaining variance. They came to the planning board with the concept of allowing this to be rezoned to Industrial 1. The use is a freezer warehouse facility. It is an industrial warehouse use, which is allowed in our commercial district. However, given the proximity of nearby industrial zoning and the lack of a lot coverage requirement in our industrial district, the planning board felt it was prudent to move forward with rezoning of these two particular parcels to industrial to allow for the facilitation of this expansion without the need of getting zoning relief from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We are supportive of the request with the two conditions that the planning board had recommended, and the project is well underway through our design review process, and we are assuming that they will likely be before the planning board next month for a public hearing.
Questions from the council? Mike?
Yeah, 2 questions, Tim. I'm looking at the picture and I see the yellow lines. Is the addition going to be attached to the building and go towards Rockingham
It would be
Road?
towards Rockingham Road, onto that adjacent parcel. I
Okay.
believe we have Bob Baskerville from Bedford Design Consultants and Ed Doherty from Freezer Warehouse, and Bob probably has the mock-up of the conceptual plan that he could show you as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood where the
Sure.
addition was going.
I can stand and speak out loud and not put on an easel. The existing building is here in the white. There's currently a lot that comes up like this that has been purchased by Londonderry Freezer. We'll merge the two lots together, the addition goes toward the front. We're still well away from Rockingham Road, and we're putting a very generous landscape buffer and berm here.
Okay.
So the driveway will still be there. Thank you. But other than going up the driveway, we will be practically invisible from Rockingham Road.
Okay. The other question that was related to that was during the planning board hearing, I'm assuming abutters were made aware of this. Did you get any comments?
There were
from-
no abutters that showed up at the hearing.
Yeah, I don't see many abutters, but I just thought maybe someone would say something.
They did. There were no abutters. In fact, Freezer Warehouse has been before the board on several occasions over the course of the last 10 years. Most recently, prior to this, they had actually come to the planning board after working with the daycare facility that's a neighbor to the west of the
Yeah.
parcel, where they were able to put up a fence to ensure that there's no conflict with the children that are at the daycare facility in the driveway leading into the site.
Yeah. I mean, the existing facility's hidden so well that you have to look for it
You
to
do.
see it. So when I saw this, I said, oh, maybe it's gonna encroach a little bit, but there aren't a lot of homes around.
No, they're
there,
not.
so. Okay, that's all I had.
Yeah, there's really only two landowners there. It's Gagnon and Verani.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a great success story for the planning department. I mean, Mr. Doherty's coming back to town, and they're a great neighbor, and and this is the type of buildings we want to see. And
It's a high-value, low-traffic generating
and we
use.
very much thank you for going away from that other place and coming back here.
We have two, right?
Yes,
We
we
did,
also have
okay.
Highwood Cold Storage near the Dairytown line as well.
Excellent.
I just want to briefly state that when you're working in economic development, obviously the expansion of existing buildings are key. Matter of fact, that's what represents about 80% to 90% of your business success within each community. And the fact that Londonderry Freezer Warehouse, and as well as Highland Cold Storage, represents close to over 200,000 square feet right now in Londonderry. And also coupled with the fact that I know Mr. Doherty could have taken his new expansion to another community, but chose to expand here in Londonderry. This is a lot about his commitment to Londonderry, and I think this is a move that is consistent with the direction that we want to see take place, and definitely want to recommend and encourage the board to support this request.
Yeah,
Other questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I know this is not an economic development meeting, but it sounds like it is. It would be good for us to know why they chose to stay in Londonderry, if you're willing to let us know. Because we'd love to hear that.
My name's Ed Doherty, and I'm General Manager of Londonderry Freezer and Highland Cold Storage. We had an opportunity to move our operation, consolidate in Hooksett. We still own currently 77 acres and our permits are current. We decided not to go forward with that project because we saw an opportunity to expand our Londonderry freezer facility and give us what we need. At the time we had proposed the Hooks facility, it was 3 years ago. It was just before the economic crash. And quite honestly, we can't get the financing to do a project that big at this time in Hooksett. So I went to Andre and said, we really need to expand our business, maybe not to the degree that we wanted to do it in Hooksett. And this will allow us to move on from Hooksett and to stay in Londonderry as a business, a viable business.
That's great.
That's great news.
That's great. And if
That is.
as one counselor who won't be here in 5 days, if in the future, we've been telling this to any businesses that come in, because Andre brings them in on a monthly basis, if there's anything down the road that causes you to kind of start to think again about alternate locations, we'd appreciate you coming back in and meeting with us and discussing options so that you stay with us in the future as well, like you just did.
I think at the time there was down on Page Road, we were.
Yeah, we were looking all over, yeah.
There was a different time with
Okay.
TIF and everything like that. We love Londonderry. I mean,
Okay.
12 years ago, I came in front of the board and planning board, and, I mean, the community's been great to us. And we hope we can, we reciprocate in kind, and, we just enjoy being in town. And, I'm happy that things didn't work out in that other town. Yes, if, in the future,
Yes.
we do have a need to expand, and I hope we do.
Yeah.
We'll go back and see what's available and, you know, what direction the town's going for
Great.
available land.
Well, thank you very much for your honesty and coming in and telling us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Tim, my only question was, it looks like there's some structures on that smaller lot. Do those
Yes,
need to be?
those will be demolished as part of the site plan process,
Any
yes.
historical
No.
value to those? No, okay. I didn't think so. And just to comment, you know, one of the things I noticed about the plan is that because of the, you know, it's a huge building, but by the way it's positioned, you're only seeing a little bit of the facade, so when you drive by, you don't realize
That's true.
how far back it goes, so that's pretty neat. And I was driving by there 2-3 weeks ago, and right in the power line there was a deer running through there, so it's still, you know, kind of keeps that, it'll keep that.
There is a very large parcel adjacent to this that is actually mitigation for the Home Depot site, which is protected open space.
Oh.
So a large portion of the lot, immediately to the west of the east of the existing building is permanently protected open space.
So watch the deer when you come into work in the morning.
Home Depot.
That was wetland mitigation for Home Depot. They had
How did that get over?
You'd be surprised at
we
where
are
the
in-
open space preservation lots are in Londonderry. They're all over the place.
Thank you, Home Depot.
But I gotta say, with regard to that, it's good that Londonderry has an open space plan, because when developments come in like that, that need mitigation, we can just point to their plan and say, this would be a good lot if you were to look forward to that, to the preserve.
We've had several projects that have had to purchase off-site land for wetland mitigation. The Elliott had to do some as well. There's more than a handful that in the 10-plus years I've been here.
And that's a DES requirement.
Yes.
Okay, we are in a public hearing, so do any members of the public have any questions or comments, any butters or? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the council. Any final questions or comments? Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor, and it has been seconded, so there's no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and it passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
There was no copy of it, so I'll just sign what was in my packet. Give it to you. Okay. And you could have Dave bring you a fresh copy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor of closing public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and public hearing is closed. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. We're going to old business, which is the fiscal year 12 budget review. Governor Lynch recently released his proposed fiscal year 12-13 state budget, which may result in a significant financial implication of local governments. And this agenda item provides the council with an opportunity to review options to respond to any adverse impacts upon Londonderry. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you first.
Sure. We're in a situation similar to 2 years ago when when the governor formulated his biennium budget. It's essentially a result of the less than optimal economic times. This year's proposed state budget in part recommends that the state completely abdicate its responsibility for paying for a portion of retirement costs for our police, firefighters, and teachers. The way that bill comes in is it's not on the revenue side. It's actually, we will receive an invoice based upon salaries, and the law has stated for years that the state pays 35% of that. And for the last 2 years, it's been reduced to 30% and 25% respectively. So you pay the net bill. And if the governor's proposal is adopted, then we will receive essentially no set-off for state contributions. So we have to pay the entire retirement bill. To give you a sense of the rates for FY12 is that they're about a little over 30% retirement costs for fire employees, uniform employees, and about 25% for police, so it's a significant burden. So if the state removes and decides to eliminate it and step away from its obligation, we anticipate at this point that there would be an additional $460,000 in obligations coming to the town of Londonderry for FY12. Now, we're finalizing our health insurance rates for FY12, and we think that's going to absorb between $90,000 and $100,000. So we're looking at about an impact of $368,000. And it's really premature at this point to look at solutions, since we're not sure what the ultimate problem is going to be. The feedback I've received from state representatives is they think it's draconian to impact local governments with that degree of an impact in one budget. So we're not going to know for another 60 days as to what the issue is, but there really are three options which the council can look at to address this potential problem. And I want to stress the potential at this point. First is to request an amendment to the operating budget on Saturday to reflect this potential additional cost. Obviously, since it's only a proposal, that recommendation is not timely, as the state may look elsewhere to balance its budget other than the backs of local governments, and so that would be additional dollars raised, which would be unnecessary. The second issue is to consider the issue of a special town meeting to deal with the ramifications if they be brought upon us. And the third option is to essentially just manage within whatever appropriation is approved at town meeting, which may result in a transfer of funds from one service or one program to another to pay for this legal obligations, which we do have. So we've laid out for you what we think at this point would be the impacts if the town were to be saddled with the entire invoice of $468,000. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, at least to that degree, but we're not going to know for another 60 days. So I guess my recommendation is to broach the issue at town meeting and get some feedback as to the direction the citizens want to go. And the council have weighed in what their goals are, what their budget goals have been, and what the budget goals will be in the future. So folks have an idea or an opportunity to have a dialogue as to what direction they want to see the community move forward for the FY12 budget. And again, we're not going to know. They try to put the budget to rest by June 1st, effective July 1st, but in the last couple of bienniums, it's crawled really into the latter part of June because there's so many tough fiscal decisions to make. We're all trying to balance, continue to provide service at the state and local level versus, people's ability to pay, because a lot of folks are having difficulty meeting their property tax obligations. So those are three options we do have, and this agenda item provides an opportunity for the council to weigh in on their position and what we might see in the future.
Okay. Questions or comments from the council?
Yeah, that was a wet blanket on a good night. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, that was, well, I'll just leave it at that.
Mike?
Yes, so,
Short timer.
one of the things the governor was quoted as saying in terms of the retirement costs, I think should be looked at a little bit deeper, that he didn't believe the state should subsidize local retirement costs like we've been doing, especially since the state doesn't have a say in how those costs are driven. So on the one hand, depending upon your view of these things, whether it's an unfunded mandate, whether it's the state government offsetting costs that they have down to the local government, we can really argue that all day and all night. But if you look at what he's saying, I think there's some merit to that. In other words, while the state has had an obligation up to this point to contribute to the funding of retirement costs, it's the contracts that are negotiated and agreed upon at the local level and approved by the local voters that really determine the ultimate cost that the taxpayer is bearing. So I think what the governor is saying, at least that's my take, is the local folks really need to take a long, hard look at how they've been doing business relative
to contracts which impact retirement costs. So as a counselor who's leaving in 5 days, my recommendation at this point is that we not request any additional money at town meeting. And it sounds like that would be foolish to do so because we're not going to know the governor's budget for another 60 days. But I wouldn't want to go to town meeting and request any additional money. I like the bottom line budget that we have. I'm actually quite pleased with this council's goal. I'm very pleased with this council's collective effort to achieve that flat tax rate heading into town meeting. And regardless of what the governor's proposed and the implications that have been put forward by Dave, I'm not inclined in the least to change our bottom line budget heading into town meeting. I'm also, and I won't be here, but I'm going to say it anyways, I'm also not in favor at all of requesting a special town meeting at some subsequent date to make up whatever the delta is. In other words, I think it is time to finally live within our means, and whatever the budget is, after it's been scrubbed by the legislature, if it's reduced further, we should deal with it, find the money locally, and live with that going forward, and not request any additional money at any special town meeting. Dave's laid out some options through his department heads on how they would handle this budget as proposed if it was passed. The future council will determine whether those options are the ones you want to choose or not. But as one individual who will be a taxpayer sitting out there, I'd be asking that council to not come back and ask for any money and find that money within the existing budget and keep the flat tax. So I'm somewhat in favor of what the governor's proposing, as bad as that may sound to some people, and we'll agree to disagree, but I think it's time, I think the state's realizing they need to live within their means, finally. And I'm not going to fight them on that, because I think we need to do the same thing. That's it.
Okay, well, since I'm the other person who's going to be leaving in 5 days, I'll come in next, and then I'll go to the three of you who have the privilege of being around here for another year or two. For the most part, I agree with Mike. I think this council and town staff put a lot of effort, and I think it was an incredible accomplishment that we got to where we kept the tax rate flat at $4.74, and I'd like to see us continue to do that. I don't think we could take any action this weekend anyway, and it is premature. One of my thoughts was, more feedback to the counselors who were staying is, in agreement with Mike that, we should be getting to a point where we spend money on what we spend on and try to depend less and less on the other forms of government for giving us money, where it makes sense. Obviously, things like grants and so forth are different, one-time things, but for ongoing things. So, plan your budget cycles for the next couple of years so that I think inevitably it's going to go down to zero whether we like it or not. So, plan for that. So even if they keep it at 25%, I would assume it's going to go to 20% next year. If they drop it to 20, assume it's going to go to 15 next year, or more, and budget accordingly. So, John?
Hey, I'm just going to wait and see how it all plays out. I mean, we don't have enough information at this point. So, I think we did a good job on the budget. I think we did the right things. Try to hold the line best we can and wait and see what they say. We do pay a statewide property tax. We pay a county tax. We pay a town property tax. It's all our money, and they're taking some of it to do other things. So I think we have to see what the legislative body does and then act accordingly, and pay for things within our means.
To John's point, well, first I was going to say ditto to what you and Mike were talking about, because I believe that is the way we're going, not just here in Londonderry, but across the state. So I'll say ditto to what you guys were saying, and I do agree. And to what John was saying, he's also correct as far as the percentage. We're still donating percentages of our taxes to other things that the state takes takes from us. So, if they're gonna be shorting us on that end, then maybe they should be considering not taking out money for us, on other things. So, can't have it both ways as far as I'm concerned, but I guess, all in all, I think I'm very proud of the council for at least holding the line. And I'm not willing to, what Mike said, I'm not willing to go to the public for a special meeting. As one that's staying for at least the next year, I think that we should live within the budget that we presented to the public. Hopefully, that's what comes out in town meeting on Saturday. And that's my recommendation. And it'll be that way after we hear the budget, so that's all I have.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to disagree with anything that my fellow councils have said, but I do have some issues with the behavior at the state from a fiscal management standpoint, not so much a political philosophy, but a fiscal management. The state currently has a legal requirement to pay X% to its retirement costs. That's the law. And that's how we plan our budgets. That's how we plan our tax rates. And our budgeting is done. The school department's budgeting is done. And now the state is coming back at this late hour and giving us trial balloons, if you will, or hints that there's going to be some major changes that we're going to have to react to that we can't react to without some type of special, extraordinary action in terms of either cutting or special town meetings to raise taxes or something else. But there's one thing about cutting programs and cutting costs. I mean, we know about that. We've done it here locally. We know how to do that. But there's another issue when you keep things the way they are and just make somebody else pay, or downshifting the costs. And again, after we've gone through all the planning that we started back in October, and going back to the department heads back in August, that they started this planning cycle for their fiscal responsibilities. And then downshifting those costs to us and say, hey, look guys, have fun with this. I mean, I think it's very disappointing to see this behavior coming out of the governor's office or out of the state house, and especially with the timing being that our budgeting is done. If they had made this decision earlier, we could have planned for it earlier. But it's very, very difficult for us to be responsible fiscal managers, which is I view our primary role to be in these jobs when the state behaves this way. So that's the beef that I have. Like I said, I don't disagree with anything my fellow councils have said. I just am disappointed with the way that and the timing that the state is dealing with these matters.
Just one other note that I had made. Maybe it's a good idea, Dave, to put it on our agenda for our next meeting when we get together as a new council, would be to invite our state reps to have a little bit of a discussion on where they're going with it, what their feelings are, and just give us some insight as to what their plan is. I just think it would be a good information session if we could do that. So.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion points? Okay. Well, just my final statement on this is, that it's, I'm hoping that at least getting us through this budget cycle, we find that there's little to no impact. But I think the lesson learned here is, well, Dave, isn't it a 2-year budget that the state does?
That's correct.
So at least for the next budget cycle, we'll know what we have, good, bad, or indifferent. So if they...
Not
maybe
really. But
Not really. It's still downshifting during
But we
it.
should, as a town council, you should be maybe assuming some of the risk in the budgeting so that we, and then if we find out that it doesn't come to fruition, then you know, that's good. But- Okay. Dave, were you looking for any other? That's it. Okay. Moving on to new business, our first order of business is Resolution 2011-01 relative to the agreement to provide law enforcement services to Manchester Boston Regional Airport. So I ask Chief Hart and Captain Falone to come up.
The goatee boys.
I was going to say, I notice Paul's is a little bit darker in hue.
By much. You're leaving the council, right? Good luck.
Notice I have a lot more gray hair starting to appear than I had 3 years ago when I first took this.
I was going to come up, no disrespect intended, but Paul, I had every intention of coming up and saying what a pleasure it was to work with you. I really enjoyed our time here, respect your service to the town, but that's out the window. First you hit my goatee, then you hit my hair, what little there is of it, falling out by the day.
Yeah, you know that patrol car that's been parked down, doing something different now when they're down the street from your house.
I did want to say before we talked about the airport, thank you, both Councilor Brown and Councilor DeMarco from the police department for the service you provided to the town. We have enjoyed your support and enjoyed working with you in the cooperative efforts that you've shown. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And before I let you speak to this particular thing, we probably should be official and read this into the record, because this is the first reading, so.
Sure. This is Resolution 2011-01. It's a resolution relative to an agreement to provide law enforcement services at the Manchester Boston Regional Airport. First reading is tonight. Council should be adopting this tonight, 3/7/11. Whereas the Town of Londonderry Police Department has been providing law enforcement services to the Manchester Boston Regional Airport since July 1st, 2006. And whereas the town and Manchester Boston Regional Airport have reached an agreement for the Londonderry Police Department to continue to provide law enforcement services at the airport until June 30th, 2016, with optional extension terms available to the parties. And whereas the existing agreement has resulted in enhanced coordination of law enforcement services between the town and the airport, and further resulted in the town receiving significant revenues to cover administrative costs, expenses, which is transferred to the general fund to further reduce the town's reliance on its property tax base. Now therefore be resolved by the Londonderry Town Council that the town manager is authorized to execute the airport law enforcement agreement with Manchester Boston Regional Airport. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I think Tom
beat me to it.
Okay, Chief. Thank you.
Just briefly, I know you have other things on your agenda. I'm sure you've had each an opportunity to review the agreement. It changes in 4 ways. First, and perhaps most importantly, the term of the agreement is different than it was both for the sheriff and for the Londonderry Police Department. Until this agreement, the longest agreement was 3 years, and prior to the termination of the agreement with the sheriff, it had been a succession of 1-year options that had been exercised by the airport. This represents a commitment by both parties, a commitment based on a high level of professionalism, delivered first by Captain Dusso and the people who assisted him in putting us into the airport, and then by Captain Falone, who has maintained that high-level, trust-based relationship with an emphasis on communication and problem-solving, to a 5-year agreement with 5 2-year extensions available. So this is very different than anything they've done in the past. It represents a long-term commitment to the town of Londonderry by Manchester Boston Regional Airport, and similarly a commitment by the town to the airport. Interestingly, it will take those 13 or 14 officers initially hired in the first battery of hirings in 2006 through a 20-year career in law enforcement. Obviously, things will be different by the time they get to 20. But, based on today's rules, it will take them through their 20-year career. Additionally, one of the things we found both in practice administering the agreement with MHT was that enhanced communication was nothing but good. Paul and I regularly meet, Paul every day, really, and I, once a month at least, meet with the airport officials just to make sure everything's going okay. And we feel so strongly, both parties, about that communication that we've put a requirement to have an annual meeting to talk about things and to have everything on the table in terms of the administration of the contract available for amendment. Because what we found was as the contract moves on, situations change, and we need to be flexible and responsive to the needs of the other party. Similarly, that extends from MHT to us. The coordination, or calculation rather, of the administrative fee is going to change. Under this agreement, it's a dollar amount based on the total hours, in effect, sold to the airport. Previously, it was on staffed hours based on a percentage. So ultimately, it'll be pretty close to what it was this year. Staffing is going to change, however, and that's one of the last things that the agreement does. It focuses on the ability of flexible staffing year to year, and that's in coordination with the division commander at the airport, a middle manager, really, and the director of security at the airport. They'll make those decisions on what the staffing needs of the airport are. So, frankly, a very, very successful 5-year run has led to this opportunity for the people of Londonderry. While I don't have the number immediately at hand, one of the things that the resolution talked about was the return to the taxpayers of money to the general fund, defraying the taxes for the citizens of this community. Well over $1 million. So this is a really important agreement for the community. It also has a value added, something we don't talk about because it's not tangible. The value added is that we are able to draw on far greater, highly trained, highly professional Londonderry officers who work in this community every day as our police officers. So in effect, we're able to bump up our law enforcement services on a regular basis. Very proud of the people who've worked there and who've made this agreement, especially Captain Falone, who was the mover and the shaker on it. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I appreciate you listening to me.
Okay. Questions or comments from the council? Sean?
Providing the council approves it tonight, will there be a press release, notify the taxpayers that we get some good stuff happening?
Sure.
Because I think that's I was reading through it, and I think it's a great commitment from the airport and from the town perspective. I think it's a great thing, so I'm looking forward to it.
Mike?
Yeah, a couple questions that you kind of answered as you went through, Bill. But one I wasn't aware of were we competing with any other agencies? Was this like an RFP or a bid, or was it just the airport talking to us?
No, it was initially an RFP.
Okay.
As the contract expires this coming June 30th, I think it was maybe last July, they put out a request for proposals. Initially, there were no other bidders. Almost, I think it was several days after the bidding closed, New Hampshire State Police expressed sincere interest, but the airport had closed the bidding, and so at that point, we began a fairly lengthy discussion about what our needs were and what their needs were.
Okay. The other question I had was, and I did read through this, but in terms of the staffing changes between the previous agreement and this one, whether there was economic pressures and passenger levels, et cetera, that kind of dictated that the airport needed to kind of look at those things, and I'm assuming they did, rightly so, and this agreement kind of maps to that. And the change in staffed administrative fee levels versus billable, that makes a lot of sense to me on the airport, so that's not a surprise. The one thing that's a constant, which I love about this agreement, is what you mentioned, which is the ability to have officers become trained and qualified over the course of time because of this contract. That's a big savings to the town. So while there might be a small delta in the billable versus staffing, the administrative fee, I think we still make up, that ground easily because of the value add.
Absolutely, no
Like,
question.
Easily, yeah. Yeah, so I love this agreement. I think it's great, and I love the fact that they're willing to kind of say, we're interested in long-term with you guys. That's another great thing, for this type.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Because that's really one of the most, what is a fundamental piece of this agreement that's
Yeah.
different. And I think that goes to the heart of the Londonderry Police Department. And on this one, I'm going to toot our horn,
Yeah.
not mine so much, because it's really Captain Falone and Captain Duso and the men and women who staff that airport every day. Because of the superlative hiring program that this police department has, because of the excellent training that we have adopted as our way of doing business, and the highly professional supervision, and the respect for trust-based management that we exercise at that airport, we're constantly communicating about every aspect. It is easy to believe that which we hear from other agencies, that Londonderry Police Department is one of the finest police agencies in New England. I'm very proud of what these men and women have done there, and it was because of our professionalism and because of the way we do business. Last point on this. Interestingly, the way we police in Londonderry, at the airport, is an extension, really, of the way we police here. And we're firm believers in the idea of community-based policing, and that's what we do up there, and it works. So thank you very much for recognizing that.
And I do, Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me, and Tom, as a longtime counselor, will remember that I think one of the most successful things that the town did was improve the relationship that we had with the airport. If you remember, Tom, it wasn't always, the best, and we were able to work with the airport, and Kevin Dillon in particular, when he was here, to revisit the intermunicipal agreement, develop a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, because of the significant hosting of the airport within our community. And from that point forward, we've been on a really solid ground with the airport, and this is kind of an extension of that relationship. And Tom, you can kind of see this. It's really paying off.
It is, yeah.
We've got a great partnership with them. They're a significant economic engine now, and they will be. And I think they're hiring you guys because it makes sense to protect that asset with the best group around. So it's a great story, really is.
I think, if I may, I think that it's worth noting that the airport itself, airport proper, is about 75% in Londonderry, and so it makes every sense that Londonderry should be the law enforcement agency that protects that asset and the people that use it.
Well, one of my more memorable moments as a town councilor was when I used to be employed by a company right up near the airport. And we had a customer service organization in that company. And someone called up and made a threatening remark to one of our customer service agents. He threatened to come kill the person. So I called the police, and afterwards I found out that I went over the air as go to this company and see Paul DeMarco. Well, next thing you know, I look out the window, and here comes Captain DeSalt, full blues, and I don't know where all of a sudden the entire airport shift came over along with a couple of the sector cars,
cruise missiles.
and it was a good feeling to see that that because the airport was right near my office, that they had that kind of assets available. If God forbid it had been an actual incident, we knew that we could depend on that kind of response. So I was or still am technically for a couple more days, the liaison to the Manchester Airport Authority, and constant kudos from the director as well as his staff on the work that Londonderry Police Department has been doing. So it's not a surprise to me that they've asked to stay on for a long-term commitment. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, did you have any comments?
You know, as a frequent user of the airport, and it's always nice to come home and see familiar faces. You know, I know Mark and Brian personally, and you know, it's a good feeling to come home when you know, first thing you do is walk off, and there's a guy with one of our patches. It's a nice thing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to serve.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, we do have a motion on Resolution 2011-2 and I'm sorry, 2011-1 and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? And chair votes affirmative, and it passes 5-0.
Thank you for your support. Thank you. May I be excused? Okay.
Okay, moving on with our agenda. We have,
Resolution 2011.
yeah, 2000, we have another resolution,
02.
2011-02, relative to the demolition of the North Fire Station.
I would love the opportunity to read that one. You want that one?
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right,
but,
okay,
You know,
I'm
my
sorry.
farewell,
I digress.
Would you
My-
please-
farewell, let me get to it, I apologize. Okay, that's Manchester.
37.
Oh my God, where is it?
Page 37.
This one's a long time coming.
Okay, here we go. Resolution 2011-02, relative to the demolition of North Fire Station, first reading this evening and adoption this evening. Whereas the town received an ARRA grant and additional town meeting funding to construct a northwest fire station on Grenier Field Road. And whereas, after a review of the structural integrity of North Station and a survey of space needs, town staff recommends that the structure be declared surplus to the town's needs. And whereas North Station is situated on a plot with the senior center and must share inadequate parking facilities, and whereas the town needs to complete soil remediation activities at that location, with New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services funding available for this work through June 30th, 2011, and whereas the town is best served by removing the structure and reserving the area for additional parking and future space needs for the senior center. Now therefore be it resolved by the Londonderry Town Council that North Fire Station 535 Mammoth Road is hereby declared surplus to the needs of the town, and the town manager is authorized to secure the necessary permits and execute agreements to demolish North Fire Station. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Okay,
Just a couple of additional comments is that, as stated in the resolution, there needs to be some soil remediation activities completed at that site. The value of that's about $24,000, and the state has funds available till the end of June to complete that, so it makes sense for us to move forward. Steve Cotton did receive bids for the demolition with the expectation the council would act fairly upon this resolution. We think that's going to cost about $20,000 in the Expendable Maintenance Trust Fund. Now, I did receive a call from someone today who's interested in renting the facility through the end of spring to maintain and repair buses there. So we'll show them the facility tomorrow. Just looking at the cost benefit of losing that state money for remediation work we'd have to do anyway, I don't think we're going to be able to reach agreement. I'm not quite sure the use is good for that particular site, but I just want to make sure the council is aware of that. So I would recommend that the council continue to adopt Resolution 2011-02. If anything earth-shattering changes, then I'll notify the council immediately. I don't expect it to. And on a final note, we are scheduled for a hearing with the Demolition Delay Committee on Tuesday, March 15th, since this building is over 50 years old.
if you can rent it out, can you get it like $463,000 for 6 months? Tom?
Dave, if we were to delay this and, let's say, we rent it out or just not move on it right away, mothball it for a year, let's say, and just wait to see if other needs arise beyond the senior center, would this DES funding availability go away, and would the taxpayers then be on the hook to remediate?
DES has told me the funds have to be expended by June 30th, 2011. They have funds this year, and potential for funding next year is unknown, given the state's financial condition. So there may be funds available, but they said, given their financial status, you need to
Bird in hand.
secure the funds when they're readily available.
Bird in hand.
So that cost to do remediation may then indeed hit the 2012 budget or 2013 budget?
That would be maybe 12, maybe 13, depending upon what the schedule of the state is.
But if we move forward now, we're assured that the taxpayers will avoid the remediation costs?
That's correct.
At the local level?
That's correct, yeah. EnviroSense has developed a scope of work already. It's being reviewed by the state, so and I apologize if they get the impression I'm jumping the gun, but I'm looking at that June 30th goal line. I want to make sure that we don't jeopardize that by stopping the processes here. So we've been going on separate tracks, multiple tracks, to make sure that if we do receive authorization, we can meet those deadlines.
Mike?
Just a follow-up, Dave, is it a matter of submitting the request and we will get the money?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like an
Yes.
assurance we're gonna
Right.
get it.
That's correct.
That makes it even more valuable to me. It's not a hope we would get it.
Right.
John, do you have any comments?
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. I don't have any comments. All those in favor of Resolution 2011-02 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and it passes 5-0. John, if you could pass that over, please. Okay, we have an order 2011-03 relative to the distribution of reclamation trust funds for drop-off center improvements and bid award for additional improvements.
Paul, this could be your last one.
Okay, maybe I'll read this.
Hand the gavel to, who's the
I
vice
don't-
chair?
yeah, I can read it. Order, yeah, I can say it.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, he gave me the old one.
It's the better one. It's
Just
got
don't
more
hit
leverage
anyone
on
with
it. Order 2011-03, an order relative to expenditure of reclamation trust funds for drop-off center improvements. The reading is tonight and hopefully adopted tonight. Whereas in 2003, voters established a reclamation trust fund to fund the disposal of motor vehicle waste and recycling and reclamation of other waste pursuant to RSA 149-M. And whereas improvements are necessary to the drop-off center to allow for the proper recycling and reclamation of wastes. And whereas improvements to the drop-off center have been identified as a need in the town's capital improvement program. Now therefore be it ordered by the town council that the town treasurer is hereby ordered to expend $108,251.26 from the reclamation trust funds for improvements to the drop-off center. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I have my gavel back. Okay, comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was an amended motion which made out major packet, but it is on the electronic copy.
For the 192,
Yeah.
985?
Yeah,
Yeah,
w-
we
essentially,
noticed that.
we receive bids for the next phase of the work, including concrete slab, retaining wall, guardrails, and fencing. So staff is also seeking authorization to execute all necessary documents with Southern New Hampshire CCI for concrete and other site work at a cost of $192,985,
So should I amend this?
if you would.
Can you read me that number again? 192?
Well,
It's
we're
two
asking,
numbers, right?
yeah, we're asking for the authority to expend 108,251.26 for improvements recently completed, and I'm asking for authorization to execute documents for a contract with Southern NH CCI for 192,985.
All right, I'm confused. So,
It's-
I get the 108 part, but
Oh, okay, it's on
See,
this.
What
So
the town purchasing and our finance policies are is that I need authorization from the council to sign contracts in excess of $100,000. And so the first part of the work, it came in with different phases, but they added up to 108, where there were different folks in different phases. So I'm looking for authority to pay those bills for 108,
Oh,
and then getting
okay.
authority to sign a contract for the next phase, which is 192.
got it.
And if I can speak to this just for a brief moment, we're moving forward now because to capitalize on our experience with the state partnering with the intersection of Mammoth and Litchfield, and with the state on 28 and Page, that the bidding environment's very favorable. These are funds that have been collected since 2003, so I'm not going to raise taxes with these, but now's a great time to get this work done because the construction bidding climate is fantastic for us. So we're trying to get all this work done for any projects we have, of which we currently have funds in place, to capitalize, upon this bidding climate similar to the expansion of the cemetery.
Got it.
The bids came out great.
I just
Yeah.
was confused by the
Yeah,
wording.
yeah, I was confused. I apologize for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
One additional clarification. So Dave, are we being asked to authorize $301,236.26 from the Reclamation Trust Fund?
No, just the 108 now.
Is the Reclamation Trust Fund?
And the contract for 192, because obviously the 192, the budget contains some contingencies, so the price may come in lower.
Okay.
So I'll return later for an order requesting the council authorize us to withdraw 192 or something close to that
From
from the trust fund.
From the trust, so it's all trust fund money,
Right,
that's what I wanted
exactly.
to know.
Yeah,
it's all trust fund
No
money.
taxpayer
Right.
impact, it's been collected already. Okay.
Well, I've written in this into here, so when I sign it, you at least have that, so. And with that, I'd like to amend my motion to include the up-to-date report.
Amend my second.
Thank you. Okay, discussion. Oh, you're gonna save me all the trouble already.
Sorry. I didn't know you were writing it, apologize.
Okay. Questions or comments? John? John? John?
Nope, almost done.
Okay. No comments, so, all those in favor of order 2011-03 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and it passes 5-0. Okay, and we have one more, I
One more.
believe. Order 2011-04. If I could have someone else read that, please.
I'll read that, Mr. Chairman. This is an order relative to the expenditure of maintenance trust funds for various projects. And this reading here is March 7th, 2011, and if the council votes to adopt it, it will adopt it this evening. Whereas the voters since 2003 have approved funding for the maintenance and repair of public buildings and grounds in the town, and whereas expenditures have been made for various projects, specifically roof, HVAC, and electrical work at Leach Library at a cost of $578.92.
How am I doing?
Pump repairs at Central Fire at a cost of $499.50. Installation of floodlights at Highway Garage at a cost of $900. Roof repairs at the Access Center at the cost of $750. And snow removal expenses at the Senior Center at the cost of $1,100. Now therefore be it ordered that the Town Council, Town of Londonderry, the Town Treasurer is hereby ordered to expend $3,828.42 for the aforementioned repairs and improvements. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of order 2011-04 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair votes affirmative, and it passes 5-0. Pass that down. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes. We do have the minutes of the council's public meeting of 2/14/11 in our packet. I did not have any modifications.
A motion to approve as presented in our packet.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the 2/14/11 meeting of the town council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Chair votes affirmative, and the minutes are accepted 5-0. Moving on to other business, liaison reports.
I missed the elderly affairs. I had to go to my daughter's basketball game. Planning board. All right, this Wednesday night. After 2 months and many discussions, Woodmont is, the developers for Pillsbury Realty are coming in with their next conceptual plan. What exactly they're going to present, we don't know yet. They're moving towards a master plan. It seems that there is, the planning board has done what the planning board always does. It's now started to ask questions about traffic. So now it should start to get interesting. So if you're interested, either, watch what's going on or show up for the meeting. And I'll apologize now for abandoning all of you at 7:30 tomorrow morning. I have to go away on business, so my apologies.
Okay, but you'll be there for the opening?
I'll be there at the opening, and I'll leave and go to the airport.
Okay.
And see our fine Londonderry police staff.
I have no liaison reports. Sean?
I have nothing to add. I will be, I notified Meg I should be there between 12 and 1 tomorrow.
Safe trip, John. The CONSCOM has met and is, we're bringing up shortly at one of the next future meetings, the discussion of acquiring an additional easement for the town, and that will be, I believe, in early April meeting. Dave, help me if, is it, I think it's early April, so that's an upcoming event, so if Mike and Paul want to come back and sit in the audience and participate, I know you'd be very interested, and Mike, you have the itch, I know that, no? But, I'm being facetious, so that's an upcoming event.
Mike?
Yeah, I actually did have my last liaison meeting was on Wednesday, the 23rd of February. It was the anti-litter subcommittee of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which I'm a liaison to. That committee was jettisoned that night in real terms. We kind of reviewed the charge of the committee that David put together, reviewed the roles and responsibilities. I was asked by the chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee to do a 91A presentation to the folks to let them know what their responsibilities were relative to that. That went very well. We had a healthy discussion about that. So that committee is essentially now on its own, and they will follow the charge, and they'll report back to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee on a regular basis. They'll also report to the council in the future with a report recommending what they'd like the council to consider relative to helping with anti-littering in town. So I think we're in good hands with this committee. They were all very energetic and interested in doing this. And combined with the great folks on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I think this is going to be one of those future volunteer efforts that are going to pay big dividends. So you'll hear from them in the future. And that was my last liaison.
I just had one thing I wanted to add, which I thought I was going to do, but I just wanted to bring this up and again say thank you to you and to Mike. And it's been a pleasure serving with you guys, and I've enjoyed my time on the council with you guys. And I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you.
You better show up on Saturday.
Okay.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Always worried about the keys.
The only other thing I forgot to mention was that I will be there tomorrow morning. I believe Mike, myself, and John will be there to officially open the polls at 7 a.m. Oh, you'll be there? Okay, so we'll have 4 of us, that's good. And that's it for liaison reports. Still turn it over to Dave for the town manager report.
Just one thing quickly, we're hosting a council meeting right after the town meeting for election of officers.
Okay.
And the last couple of years, the council has preferred to make their committee assignments at their first regularly scheduled meeting, which will be March 21st.
Okay.
So presuming that's still the direction, we'll schedule it that way. Okay.
Okay. On that note, one of my liaison positions is the HAZMAT, the Southern New Hampshire Mutual Hazardous Materials Mutual Aid District, whatever that big long acronym is. And I had taken that over from Marty, and I actually have a whole binder of stuff, so whichever of you, if it's one of you 3 or if it's some of the other, I'll have that, and I'll make sure, probably through Dave, I'll make sure it gets to them.
You want to stay? Stay as the liaison?
Come on, Paul, it's right up your alley. You like that stuff.
Okay, I'm willing to pay for this. All right. You may get a new Mike Brown down the road, but let me know if there's a cost.
Okay.
You won't need that for town meeting?
Oh, do you need this for town meeting? Okay. All right, when I hand the keys in.
I'm gonna keep my
hand
keys
that
until
to
town
Trey.
meeting too, just in case I need to get them. So. Yes,
Get up and adjourn.
Close.
we still have the, you're all done with the town manager meeting? And, board committee reappointments, do we have any of those? There was, something I had to sign, was that just for, someone who's already, he's, okay, I thought we.
Last one.
Reed, did you have any final comments? We're not in public comment anymore, you realize, so,
No.
but,
no, you
I
don't.
used my last chairman's, prerogative to.
While you go and vote tomorrow, I'm sure you'll drop by the historic
Shameless plug.
booth. We have, with some luck, delivered today a whole bunch of new shirts with the Morrison House logo on it. I'm sure you all will look wonderful in it, as will everybody else who is listening tonight. And I'm looking forward to seeing you, not till 7:30 though. Carry on.
Thank you. Okay, I will accept the motion.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions, and the chair.
I was gonna say
We
nay,
are
just to make you guys.
adjourned.